Welcome to Reduce CyberRisk Podcast, episode 65, How to Pass the CISSP and CISSP Sample Questions. Welcome to the Reduce CyberRisk Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need to pass the CISSP exam while enhancing your cybersecurity career. Hi, my name is Shon Gerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide the information you need to grow your cybersecurity knowledge so that you're better prepared to pass the CISSP exam. All right, let's get going. Good morning, this is Shon Gerber on this beautiful day. Hope everybody's doing well and everything is going good around the world. Hopefully you are staying safe from the coronavirus and how that spread is going throughout the globe. So it's kind of a scary time right now for people. And well, I mean, honestly, as far as your odds of you getting it are pretty slim as of today, but it's something you still need to keep in your mind and keep aware of. So stay safe out there if you're listening to the podcast, and you should stay inside and study for your CISSP exam. You're probably pulling your hair out now like I was, because I know I used to study that thing for hours on end and start basically from when I got off of work, put my kids in bed. So it was about 9 o'clock, and I would start from 9 p.m. till probably about 1 a.m. most days. And then I took the test the first time, and I failed it. And the sad part is that in the CISSP, as you guys are probably all fully aware of, they don't give you a real good grade on how you did on what you did bad on. They just told you, at least at that time when I took mine, all it gave you was where you had issues at and what you could study on more. So it was a interesting endeavor. It took me about 3 months to recover from that, and then decided to go right back at it again. So I know if you're studying for this, it's hard, and it's one of those things that you put a lot of work into. So when you do get it and you do pass it, I highly recommend that you don't let it lapse, because that's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. Yeah, actually, on a different note, I had a situation with the CISSP recently where I did my CPEs, but there was a problem with the billing, and they told me that they were going to take my CISSP away because I didn't pay. Well, it got dumped into my spam email, and I didn't even realize I had a payment. So I freaked out for a little while there, but it all worked out, and things were good. So anyway, so as far as today goes, we are going to be talking about how you can pass the CISSP and what you can do to be better at getting that completed. And this is going to go over some different ideas of what people have had online, as well as some ideas that I've had as well, and then we'll just get into it. So bottom line is, how do you pass the CISSP? And I know this will probably be a good episode that many people will want to listen to, as everybody out there is trying to figure it out. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so this article comes from ThorTeaches.com. I've actually looked at some of his different courses he's had on Udemy, as well as his website. Does a pretty good job. I'm pretty impressed with Thor. He's been doing this for a little while, you can tell, and he's got a good program out there. And this is some of the things that he's talked about, how the best ways to pass the CISSP. Now, if you do any online looking, you'll probably notice that most people will give you probably the similar kind of recommendations, as well as myself. But the difference is that he gives you a little bit more detail around some different places you can go to get study groups and to get some more information. And as if you've all are aware of, is when you're studying for the CISSP, getting different points of view is really important, especially trying to understand how are they going to ask the questions. And even so much of that is just trying to get the knowledge you need to pass the test. Because the questions, as we've talked about before, they're going to give you a little bit of guidance, but at the end of the day, if you don't know the content, you're going to have a real hard time passing the test, because you really have to know the content. Now, he talks about what you should do as far as some videos that are out there that you should be watching. Now, he puts a list of videos, and all of these will be available that I'll have in my show notes, along with I'll be putting out just a quick mini course around what do you need for passing the CISSP. So you'll see that come out here probably in the next few weeks, I'm expecting. So that one we'll talk about, get into a little bit more detail. Now, what he recommended is that you watch videos of 1 to 3 sources. Now, some of these sources are Thor Teaches, right? He didn't know about us or about me, so ShonGerber.com obviously would be at the top of your list, and I would highly recommend that you put me at the top of your list. So there's ShonGerber.com, Thor Teaches, InfoSec 4TC, and it's with Mohammed Atif. and there's another group of questions. Study notes and theory. I know that that group is out there quite a bit. Cyberary with Kelly Handerhan. Seen some of her content out there on YouTube. And then Sari Green Group has got some more CISSP training as well. I have seen some stuff out on YouTube with IT Dojo. I do recommend some of his questions that he puts out there. Those are really good if you look in those on YouTube. So I would recommend, if you're going to look for questions and for content specifically, YouTube gives you a good sample shot at that, and that's a good way for you if you're going to be a visual learner to pay attention to it. The other aspect around that is maybe you can just listen to it while you're driving. Do not watch it while you're driving, but you can listen to it while you're driving. Those are some good resources out there. You'll get my videos are available on my website as well as they're on YouTube. I'm in the process of moving more of those out to YouTube so that you'll get them either on both. You'll get them at the audio version through the podcast. You can also get some of the audio versions, and the video versions are on YouTube as well. So that kind of information is there for you. Definitely recommend you watch the videos. Now, you can get the full set of videos from ShonGerber.com. You also can go out to Udemy and find what Thor's got as well. I do have stuff out on Udemy as well. It was mainly to get people to come to generate traffic. Those are CISSP questions that are going to be videos that I haven't really updated. Most of all my updated content is going to stay on ShonGerber.com, but you'll see those out there at Udemy as well. They recommend you watch those, at least 1 to 3 of those per while you're trying to study for this. The one difference is that I never had this when I was studying for the CISSP. It was not available to me. You had the questions we had with Sean Harris, rest her soul, who had put together the CISSP book, and I studied that is what I did for quite a bit, and went through the test questions in the back of the book. I'm also was very cheap and didn't really want to go and get the test banks to pay for those, so that was cheap. And the other thing was on that is the test banks that we had at the time really weren't that good. They were full of a lot of junk, and there was a lot of viruses that were connected with them. So I just studied the book itself from Sean Harris and didn't have the videos. So now you all that are studying for your CISSP have a plethora or a cornucopia of different videos you can watch to help you with your CISSP. And I know it does vary from person to person on how they explain things. So it is good to get a different perspective. I highly recommend it. You would think that for their quote unquote competitors of mine, but I highly recommend you check them out because people learn differently and through different sources. And so it's important to use those different skills that other people have to help maybe converse it a little bit better. One of the other things he recommends is reading the books. Obviously, ISC Squared, their CIS's professional manual, 8th edition, and that edition will cover you for the 2018 test. Now, obviously, in 2021, there will be a new version of the CISSP. That's what we're at least expecting, and then from there, we'll make changes to it as well. The one thing I noticed as I was putting more of my CISSP questions on ShonGerber.com, as well as just kind of looking for different content, the one thing to consider with the questions is a lot of people say, well, we want to stick with the 2018 versions for the questions. I would disagree a little bit because of the fact that the cyber questions that are on the CISSP, the questions they're asking in general, for the most part, unless they're wrong, which I've come across some of those that are wrong, and if you see any on my site that are wrong, please let me know. I'll make some changes to them. But if the content's pretty good, so it at least gives you educational to understand why the question's being asked and what is the context behind it. The one thing is if you're trying to memorize questions, obviously the 2015 version won't help you any, but it does give you some contextual knowledge around CISSP education. So I highly recommend older questions as well, just to give you that leg up. He also recommended the 11th Hour CISSP Study Guide. It's the 3rd edition. I don't know if they put any more in print, but this basically takes you 2015 is where it takes you to, and you can get that on Amazon as well. He did recommend, so first thing is watch the videos, read the books, and then he says go back and watch the videos again for a second time. Does reaffirm what you've read. The book itself, like the ISC Squared book, I'm looking at it right now, it's like 2 inches thick. I mean, it's a monster, right? You can beat somebody over the head with it and you will put them in a coma. So, I mean, it's that big. But the thing around that, though, is I have a hard time studying it. So I would go through individually, basically objective by objectives, and I would then build out a framework or just even a bulletized list of each of those objectives. And the purpose behind that was that it made it easier for me to study. It also allowed me to add more context to it. I would recommend that. It depends on how your learning style is, because reading that book by itself, it's like reading stereo instructions. You will fall asleep at night, and if you're reading this while you're falling asleep at night, it's so heavy it will fall on your face and suffocate you. So I would recommend not reading it while you're in bed. Make sure you're sitting up at the table so that when your head hits the floor, I guess it still kind of hurts, but maybe if you're at the table, then when your head falls asleep, it won't quite fall as far. The bed would be more comfortable, true, but the book would probably hurt you, or your partner or spouse, whoever's with you. So you just got to be careful with that. So we talked about rewatching the videos, practice questions. Take these in batches, because again, after a while, your brain just shuts down. I'd recommend taking a couple at a time. And on ShonGerber.com, I've got them set up at in about a 40 question the free bank's about 40 questions that will be included in my CISSP training. I'm going to include all of my questions. Right now there's about probably close to 120 questions. When I'm all said and done, probably over 250 to 300 questions that are in there, but I haven't added them all up yet, so they'll be there probably in the next probably month, I would say, is when they'll be there. So again, I definitely recommend taking questions and putting them in batches. Rewatch the videos for test questions. That's important. Listen to the podcast. Now, there's one thing he didn't have, is that this podcast, I go over test questions. So you will get a CISSP training on a Monday, and then you'll get test questions on a Wednesday and a Saturday. And so go over my test questions. Those are typically, I read through those, and that will give you a more leg up. If anything, it's just reaffirming and going back over this information so that it sticks into your cranium, so that when you sit down to take the test, you will pass it the first time, right? You had to throw that plug line in. It's pretty good. All right. So take the practice questions, rewatch the videos, read parts of the book again with test questions. ISC Squared has some great test questions in the back. Obviously, since they write the test, it might be good to look at those questions. I would recommend it. And you can get them from both. You also can get test questions from our sample exam questions from Boson CISSP practice, not plastic, practice exams, ISC Squared CISSP official study guide, Udemy obviously, and then various locations where you found the videos will have CISSP questions as well. One thing I've noticed with the CISSP questions, and I'm guilty to some of this as well, that the questions are regurgitated. So the questions are out there and they're kind of copy pasted and put into new versions. I have redone my own questions. I put those out there. I will tell you, making your own questions, as original as it is extremely time consuming. And so when you're working a job, another business, this business, I take advantage of what I can when I can, just to be honest there. So I would say probably about 100 of my questions are made up from me, and then the rest of those are probably pulled from different places throughout the web, because that's just the best way of doing it. Purpose of practice questions. Now, again, he talks about how you should educate yourself on what type of questions they'll be asking. That is the key. And you're also trying to understand what are the main points you're trying to pull out of this test. So when I failed it the first time, what ended up happening with me is I did not focus so much. I focused too much on passing or understanding the questions to try to pass the test, and not trying to actually understand the actual question itself. And so that's what tripped me up. I would recommend that you stay away from trying to memorize the questions. Just don't do it. And especially today's world. In the past, when I was taking it, that's how we took the test, was memorize the questions. But today, I just would highly discourage that thought process. And it's understanding how to take the test with the multiple questions. And the ones that are quote unquote almost correct, you're going to get that. You're going to get some of these questions that look, wow, that one looks right on. And that one looks really close. Which one is it? So if you don't feel confident in which one it is, they're doing that to have you so you glob onto and grab the wrong question. So make sure you read the question slow. It's really important. And the questions are around to help you understand the terminology. What are they asking for? What is governance? And I'll be honest, I struggled with governance. I'm like, when I first left the military and came into the corporate world, they kept talking about governance. And I'm like, what are you talking about with this governance thing? I don't get it. Because again, in the military, we had a different vernacular. But so the point of it was just that it is just different languages, different terminology. Now, basically, you need to understand what are they asking this question about, and then look for the double negatives. If it's not the nots that are there, I can't think of the right term right now, but it's basically an and a not. Then the double negatives, that will get you as well. So what Thor also talked about is you cannot memorize your way to a win, and I did that too. You can't memorize it to a win. I tried, no doubt. All right, the next phase is he says that he would get into practice tests, and then he'd focus on his weak areas. So as you take the practice test, then you see where you fail, and then you come back and focus on those. I will say encryption is probably one of the bigger ones that people struggle with. I had a person reach out to me the other day and requested some understanding around symmetric encryption. So I'm going to put something out there on that as well, because encryption is really goofy. You think you understand it, and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. And then you fall asleep. And you wake up the next day and, oh, what the heck was that? You forget it. So that is probably encryption is probably one of those that just people really struggle with. I know I did. And there's times I still do, because I have to sit back and ask and then dig into it again and go, oh, yeah. So that's another one to kind of think about. Take your weak areas and then rinse and repeat. That's what he's saying. Practice tests, rinse and repeat. And then last phase is what his call is that you take your practice tests, you watch weak areas with videos, look online for areas with still some concern, and then score at least 80% on the domain tests. Now, that's the practice test. Now, I'm going to just throw a little bit of Thor under the bus a little bit. I still love his content, so he's doing great. No question about that. But these are great ways to study for it if you're trying to take it by yourself. Now, he took a boot camp. And he mentioned that in some of his content. So the boot camps are awesome. I will say that if you're going to do a boot camp, I would recommend that you get some videos before you go to your boot camp. Understand the videos and understand what the context is around the ISC squared. And again, you can get, ShonGerber.com, I've got sales on from time to time. You can get these videos very, very reasonable. They're not expensive at all. You can probably find other videos online as well. But bottom line is get the videos. Then what I would do is go through those and then go to your boot camp. That will help you out substantially to be prepared, so when you go, you can ask the right questions and pay attention to the right conversations that are occurring during the training. He went to a boot camp, and boot camps, the success rate are pretty good because they do spoon feed you the information that you need to know. They are expensive, so you just got to ask yourself, is it worth the $5,000 to $7,000 for the CISSP exam, or the test? Usually the boot camp includes the exam itself. So those are some things to consider. You also can watch my video on 5 Steps for Success video series. It's out there on ShonGerber.com, and I'll have the link again in the show notes. Now, he also has a couple tips. I'm going to quick go over these tips that we have and just kind of walk you through what that's going to entail. So with the tips, tip 1 is know what the CISSP is and make sure you meet the prerequisites for the exam. I've seen this before where people don't have the prereqs for it, and that is a big challenge. So I would highly recommend you have those. And what I'll do is I'll create my mini video course. We'll kind of go over some of these tips as well that will kind of get into a little bit more of the detail. Tip 2 is make sure you speak the CISSP language fluently. One point around that is don't get cocky, right? Because you think you're understanding it, and then you realize, oh, wait, I don't understand it. I on a daily basis, I deal with security issues in my current role, and there's days when I just do not understand it. And I've got one of the guys who works for me is a security architect, and he comes up with some really cool ideas, and I'm like, man, that was a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? So you need to understand the language and also be open to the fact that things change quite frequently in this space. So definitely get into that. I can help you out with ShonGerber.com as well. We can help you out on this stuff and make sure that you got the information you need to pass the test. Number 3, make use of multiple study sources. Again, official study guides, YouTube. YouTube's got a lot of great stuff. And then podcasts, obviously, and any other media that you may use. Partner with someone else to help you take the exam. I know that here in Wichita, we have people that are in the ISC squared study group, and they actually study for the CISSP exam together. That's a really good thing. If you can spend a few hours each week, maybe a couple times a month, that would be very helpful in helping you pass the test. Tip 5, estimate and distribute your time wisely. That's interesting, because you really need to do that. I spent 3 months, like I said, of my life, 2 to 3 hours a night studying it, and it's hard. So you just need to make sure you give yourself enough time. Also give yourself time to let your brain air out and do other things, because this stuff will become overwhelming after a while. And before you know it, you'll be walking around seeing the matrix everywhere you go. I see data. I see data. Where's the data? You will see that. Yes, I think that too much, actually. It's kind of scary. Tip 6, get sleep. Obviously, don't try to cram the last minute. It's not like college where you try to cram, barf out all the information, and then at the end of the day going, what did I just do? Yes, I remember that many nights in college of doing that. Do not do that for this, because if you're studying for your CISSP, you probably want a career in cybersecurity. So I would take the approach of learning it. I've heard in situations where individuals have gone in to take the test that don't. They basically have a proctor take the test for them. You know, it's not right. It's not legal is not the right word, but it's against the ethics of the ISC squared. But basically what they would do is, and it's against ethics in general, they would say, hey, Bill, I'll pay you X amount of money. Go take the exam for me, because Bill can pass the CISSP with his eyes closed. And Bill goes in and takes it, but says, I'm Fred. Fred passes. When Bill passes, Fred gets a certificate. Yay, Fred's a CISSP. The problem is that doesn't help you, and it doesn't help the community. So it's a bad idea, one, on many reasons, on many levels. But at the end of it, you know, if you don't have the experience and the knowledge, you're going to go into these things, you're going to look like a buffoon. So don't do that. Make sure you understand how what the questions are asking for the test, and get more information. I mean, honestly, this podcast, and I say that because I'm going to do self-promotion, but the podcast is a really good way for you to get some CISSP and cybersecurity knowledge that you may not get in your current role. And because I struggled with going, well, how do I provide value to you guys? This is something that I didn't have, so hopefully you can use it. And I don't just say come to this podcast. There's many other podcasts that are out there. I would highly recommend you use those. Those are a great education tool to help you with passing the CISSP exam and your cybersecurity career in general. We talked about tip 6 is get sleep. Tip 7, establish a strategy you use during the exam. Again, set a strategy around the questions. Always answer ones you know. Break down what you thought was correct. Yada, yada, yada. You just have a methodical approach on how you do it. If you do that, that will set you up for success. So get rid of the variables that are the test variables. The only thing that you can control, but you don't know what's going to happen, is your brain and how much you regurgitate. But get rid of the variables that would cause you to fail, and that would be not reading the question thoroughly and so forth. So, bottom line is the CISSP worth it? You got to ask yourself that. I would say yes, and you better study for it, because it's financially, if you have a family, this is definitely a way for you to help increase your financial revenue. The future is extremely bright. There is no downturn in any sight whatsoever. So opportunities abound, and it's definitely something you need to consider. If you haven't done it yet and you're considering cyber and you don't know how to get into it, get a hold of me. Feel free to reach out to me. I can give you some tips on what things to start going to do to get ready and prep for your cybersecurity career. All right, so that is what Thor recommends in his training and what he put out on his blog. So again, you can go check that out at thorteaches.com. Now, let's get into some CISSP training that I want to put out there from ShonGerber.com. All right, so small little plug, got to have that. Go out to ShonGerber.com, sign up for my email list. You will get some CISSP training videos. Right now, I've got 1 through 4 come to you, but then you will get the follow-ons of 5 through 6 will come as well. It's a little mini course. I'm going to be remodifying that a little bit, and all the people that sign up for that, I will pass you the new link once it's done. But they're just making a few little changes to it to make it a little bit more useful. When I put it together, I must have been asleep, and it's not real. It's kind of kludgy and clunky, so we're going to make it a little bit better for you all. So, that being said, go to Shon Gerber, ShonGerber.com, and check it out. It's some really good stuff. Okay, in this CISSP training from ShonGerber.com, this is going to go over some areas in Domain 3, and this is the fundamental concepts of security models. And so I'm just going to go over a few of the models for you to kind of have an understanding of how those work. And you're going to be asked questions on the CISSP that are going to be around these models, and you're going to have to understand what do each of them do. Now, they're not going to ask you all 18 gazillions of them, but they will ask you, they'll take a sampling of the various models that are there, and so you're going to need to understand some key bullets around those different security models. Now, security models basically are designers map. I can't say. They're this designers map security policies to development. So basically, what they do is they map it like a framework from what they're trying to accomplish to what policy they're trying to put in place. These policies are typically not prescriptive, and these models do help. So, because if you've been in the cybersecurity space, the policies will change dramatically from one organization to another, and models must support the security policy, and that's just how important that these things are. They're very similar to security frameworks, but they do provide some level of guidance around it. Now, the models will vary. I mean, you get them from Carnegie Mellon to you've got, you'll see in just a few minutes, but they vary substantially. So you got to pick the one that works best for you and which one may meet your overall security policy goals. So I'm going to go over just a few of the key various models that you can consider. The first one is going to be the state machine model. And basically what the state machine model is it's a secure state machine that boots into and maintains a secure state. So if that model is something that would be potentially what you're looking for, and that most of the cybersecurity or most of the operating software out there will come into some sort of secure state model. They'll use that capability, but you can take that secure state to a further extreme if that's something that you wish to do. Information flow model. This prevents unauthorized information flow between different levels of security. So that would be one that would be very important as you are building out a product. Now, in some cases, you may not want to add that flow model. You may not. You may think, you know what, it's in its own network. It's not connected to anything at all. We want free use of data, and whether it's encrypted or protected between different levels doesn't matter. So you may not incorporate that thought process from that information flow model. There's a non-interference model, which is based on information flow model, which obviously you don't want to. You want to have data leakage, and that's the key part around that. It's designed to avoid data leakage in programs such as Trojans, and so that's the non-interference model. Next is the take grant model. This is a formal model in computer security that is used to establish or disprove the safety of a given computer system that follows specific rules. The right thing around this is it's basically occurs in two rights. It represents a system of directed graph where vertices are either subjects or objects, and two rights occur in every instance of the model: the take and the grant. Okay, so it's basically taking and granting. So that came off of Wikipedia. But that's the take grant model. Now there's the LaPula. Okay, that one. Yeah, LaPadula. LaPula model. This one states that a state machine model, okay, so we talked about that before, is used for enforcing access controls in government and military applications. It was developed by David Elliott Bell and Leonard LaPula. So yeah, that's why the name. Former state transition model of computer security policies describing access control rules. So that's where you get, and this makes sense from a military point of view, is that you want very tight controls on enforcing access. Obviously, since you don't want that just to go to anybody. It describes access control rules where security labels are on objects and control rules for clearances for subjects. So that's how it basically gets into the access controls. It's got the security labels are the objects, which we've talked about as well for your CISSP, and then the control rules are for the clearances. Security labels would be your obviously top secret to unclassified or even public, depending upon the situation. And then there's also no clear distinction between protection and security. So that is the Bell-LaPula model. And that one's used, again, in the military, obviously, a lot. And it's one that I've seen quite substantially. The Bibo model was developed by Kenneth Bibo in 1975, and this was the former state transition of a computer security policy that describes access control rules ensuring data integrity. And then it says data and subjects are grouped in ordered levels of integrity. So that one I've seen that one on the test, and people talking about that quite substantially, is the Bibo and the Bell-LaPula. And the Bell model, I know, since it is so much in the military and people will understand it, you can probably expect that you may have a better chance of seeing that. You'll also probably see some obscure model that is they talk about, because there's like 15 different models that they go over on the CISSP, so you'll have to decide which ones, you need to study them all, but I would pick bullets from them that help guide you in a direction. Obviously Bibo would be a real easy one if they gave that on the test that was developed in 1975, but odds are high they won't be that generous to you. So they'll probably ask you something a little bit more complicated than that. Another one that I've seen is the Clark-Wilson model. This provides a foundation for specifying and analyzing integrity policy for a computer system. Now, again, as we talk about CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, obviously their strong focus was in that space. It's primarily concerned with formalizing the notion of information integrity and is maintained by preventing corruption of data items in a system, and that's basically either due from error or from malicious intent. So that the integrity model from Clark-Wilson, I would focus on, hey, it's around integrity, it's about information integrity, and that is something that you would want to keep in mind. There's various other models out there as well. The last one I'm going to get into is the Brewer-Nash model. Now, the Brewer-Nash model was constructed to provide information security access controls that can change dynamically, and this is really important. It also was known as the Chinese wall model. So as you're looking for keywords to kind of glob onto, then you would know, okay, so information security access controls, Chinese wall model. It was designed to provide controls that mitigate conflict of interest in commercial organizations and was built upon information flow model. So we talked about that above. So that's how it was built, and it just obviously added more context based on that small model of the information flow. No information can flow between the subject and the objects in a way that would create a conflict of interest, and it's commonly used by consulting and accounting firms. So that's how they do that. Now, they had a model. This is off of Wikipedia. They had a model, or an example, I should say, which was really good. And so I'll just read this to you. For example, 1, a consultant accesses data belonging to Acme Limited. A consulting client, they may no longer access the data to any of Acme's competitors. In this model, the same consulting firm can have clients that are competing with Acme Limited while advising Acme Limited. So that's the ability to keep that segregation. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because as you're dealing with accounting and or any consulting kind of firm, you don't want a crossing of the data. You don't want a blending of the streams. The other part is this model uses a principle for data isolation within a conflict class of data to keep users out of potential conflict of interest situations. Because company relationships can change all the time, dynamic up-to-date updates to members and definitions for conflict classes are important. So now you will say that based on this model, you can probably get software out there that will do this for you. You can do this through the standard, if you have a good process in place to manage your access, if you're a company like that, just through Active Directory groups and through just your active groups that you use in your managing of your groups. But there's probably software out there, if this is a situation for you, that I would recommend using, because trying to do that yourself would be a bad idea. You will screw up, and when you screw up, then you usually have fines associated with it. So you want to avoid that. So that's all I have for the CISSP studying. So now we're going to roll real quickly into some questions. All right, so the question is, which database security risk occurs when data from a higher classification level is mixed with data from a lower classification level? Okay, so which database security risk occurs when data from a higher classification level is mixed with data from a lower classification level? A, aggregation. 2, interference. 3, contamination. D, polyinstantiation. Yeah, see, my third grade education is struggling. So A, aggregation. B, interference. C, contamination. Or polyinstantiation. All right. Don't know the fourth word, so I'm going to guess, right? So guess. Well, if I'm guessing, I'll be like, I don't know that fourth word, so I'm just going to throw that out. Aggregation. Now that's when you put things together. Interference. Inference means you're understanding something that's not really there. And okay, so if you're challenging me on my dictionary knowledge, see, I probably just screwed that up, but I kind of have an idea about that one. Contamination, that makes more sense. And it is. Contamination is the mixing of data from a higher classification level and or need to know requirements with the data to a lower classification level and or need to know requirement. So, contamination. Next question. How many major categories do TCSSEC criteria define? That's Tango Charlie Sierra Echo Charlie. A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D is 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Which one is it? It is 4. TSEC defines 4 major categories. Category A is verified protection, B is mandatory protection, C is discretionary protection, and D is minimal protection. So TSEC defines those 4 categories. Category A, B, C, and D. Next question. Which LaPula property keeps the lower level subjects from accessing objects with a higher security level? A, security property. B, no write-up property. C, no read-up property. D, no read-down property. What is it? Okay, so the LaPula model keeps lower level subjects from accessing objects with a higher security level. So let's look at that question, right? Security property. No, that doesn't make any sense. So so then you look at the 3 questions and it says no write, no read, no read. What does that mean? So you got no write-up property, okay? No read-up property, okay? And no read-down property. So you can probably throw out the last one, which is the read-down property, right? So you're like, okay, so now you're down to 2. So if you don't know, you're basically asking, well, so it's accessing objects. It's not reading objects, or it's not writing objects. It's just accessing them. So B, write-up, C, read-up. It is no read-up property. Also called the simple security policy, prohibits subjects from reading a higher security level object. No read-up property. All right, so that's all I've got for you today on Reduce Cyber Risk. Hope you're all having a wonderful week this week, and I hope you take care and stay safe, and we will catch you on the flip side. See ya! Thanks so much for joining me today on my podcast. Head over to ShonGerber.com and look at all the free content that I have available for you. There is a CISSP mini course, free CISSP exam questions, podcast, and so much more. It's all available to my email subscribers, so sign up. If you want my personalized CISSP training, purchase my training courses and I'll be there to help you with your CISSP needs so you can pass the test the first time. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.